Welcome to Let's Talk Business. I'm your host, James Price. This podcast has been designed to address business pain points, often neglected, but if dealt with correctly, can really enhance business value and performance. I've had over 30 years experience in business, and I currently own JPO Business Proprietary Limited, a business valuation, advisory, and transaction firm. We help private business clients across Australia and internationally grow, change, and enhance the value of their businesses. Welcome back to episode 9 of Let's Talk Business. I'm your host, James Price, and I'm delighted to be at the corporate office of Jim's Group. You'll know Jim's Group from Jim's Mowing and a range of about 50 other services that Jim's Group franchises in Australia and in other international destinations. They're actually the largest services franchise group in the Southern Hemisphere. And I'm delighted to have as our guest Jim Penman. Jim's CEO and founder of Jim's Group. Thank you, Jim, for having us here and for joining us on Let's Talk Business.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, I really appreciate it. I'm so excited to get to know you and talk about business and life and some of the insights that you've had along the way in building a very strong brand in the franchise world. To start off, did you ever think that you'd be here today with, I think, what do you have, 5,000 franchisees and you know?
Close to, yeah. No, not part of my life plan.
Did you?
I started off, I wanted to be an academic. My aim was to go to university and try to discover the reason for the rise and fall of civilizations. And so I spent 10 years getting myself a PhD in history and ended up mowing lawns for a living because I had no prospect of an academic career.
and I guess that lawn mowing exercise was your first taste of what was to come, was it?
Yes, it was my part-time student job.
Yeah.
It paid pretty well, paid for my car, good hourly rate. I like being outside and I like gardens, so it was pretty obvious.
Yeah.
And when I ended up without any obvious career of any other kind, it just was the obvious thing to do because that's the only thing I knew how to do.
Yeah. And so how did that morph? And I'd like to go back to the PhD bit, but before we do, how did that morph into Jim's Group or Jim's Mowing at the time? I mean, I guess it was a single business at the time. I don't know, did you call it Jim's Mowing? Or?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Jim's Mowing was originally Jim Mowing. That's all it was. And I used to put my picture on my leaflets.
Yes, yeah.
So, yeah, it was just me. Look, what I wanted to do when I finished my PhD, I wanted to continue with the research for my PhD, which was involving, even though it was about history, it actually had implications in biology.
Yes.
And I didn't have any scientific qualifications and I had no money, so what I needed to do was to build up enough wealth so that I could afford to set up my own research institute. So I knew I had to get rich somehow. Now, I didn't think that lawn mowing would be it. I was looking around for just what would be the thing, but it was just what I did because it's the only thing I knew.
Yeah.
And what I did is I just gradually looked at what I did and tried to improve it. So I actually figured out ways to find clients better. I was very good at looking after clients myself. Then I started putting on subcontractors. Then I started building up and selling lawn mowing rounds, and I had to work out how to do that.
Right.
And then in the late 1980s, because I started full-time in 1982, I was faced with a very effective, powerful competitor who came from interstate, which was VIP in those days.
Yeah,
and I just thought they'd crush me. Because they had 250 franchisees then, and they had offices and they had logos and all this stuff that I didn't have. And I had this little business with a few subbies, building up and selling lawn mowing rounds. I thought these guys would destroy me, tried to join them. I tried to actually become part of them to help them to grow, and they didn't want it. So I just decided to franchise in self-defense. And somebody asked me when I first started, they said, Jim, if it works out well, how many do you think you might have? How many franchises could you have? Yeah. And I said, well, look, I don't know if it's going to work, but if it does, maybe one day I could have as many as 100. That was
you got 5,000 today or thereabouts.
Yeah.
Oh, not just in mowing. If those franchisees are in a range of services.
Which would have been totally beyond my imagination in those days. I think the whole thing surprised me dramatically.
Yeah.
It just did. I just didn't think it would work that well. I was still, even in the early days of the franchise, I was still looking around for the thing that would actually be the thing that would really get my business built. I knew I wanted to build a great business, but I just hadn't occurred to me that lawn mowing would be the basis of it.
No. But in looking at VIP, did that give you the idea that franchising might have been the model for you, or not necessarily?
Well, the fundamental problem with franchising was that I couldn't understand in those days, in the early days, in the 80s. It's not as though it wasn't an obvious idea, but I thought, why would a person keep on paying franchise fees? Because my model in those days was building up and selling a lawn mowing range. You have regular clients, you look after them well. On the whole, you'll pick up as much as you lose.
Yeah.
So you don't need anybody. So I think, why would anybody continue paying franchise fees? And when I looked at the VIP model, I thought, well, there were some benefits. There was ongoing support of various kinds, and the fact that if you were sick, for example, because if you're a lawn mowing contractor, you break your leg, your business is gone.
Yeah, that's right.
So in a franchise, other franchises look after you, which of course we do to this day. So I could see benefits, and I could see why a person would keep on paying fees. But when I looked at what they did, I thought, okay, there are good things about it, but I reckon I could make a system that would be more beneficial to franchisees.
Add more value to franchisees.
Yeah. I could do better.
Yeah.
That was what. I could do something that franchisees would find more attractive. That was the key idea.
Yeah. Is that sort of an internal drive in you that's about continuous improvement? Because you were talking about when you were running it as an individual business, and I got the sense that, I mean, you obviously needed funds to fund your own life at that time. So a better business hopefully drove those funds, but there seemed to be a bit of an internal driver to continue to improve and change. Yeah?
That is the one thing, James, that makes the difference. People often think that success is a matter of, hey, I'm suddenly mowing lawns, and I think, hey, what if I franchise and suddenly I'm a multi-millionaire? It's not like that. No. It's thousands and thousands of little experiments, little ways to do things different every day. When I was mowing lawns, I would spend a lot of my time thinking, how can I save one pace to put the grass in my grass bag? How can I save 2 seconds here?
Yeah.
I had a word that I used to describe the way you drive amongst suburban streets. It was called a zootle. Yeah. So it was a shorthand way of remembering, you go to the end of the road, then you do a full left zootle. And that means I go to the road, I turn left, I turn right to the end of the road, and I turn right again.
Yeah.
That's an example of little time. Now, why? Because if I did that, I wouldn't have to stop and look at my street directory in those days. So thousands of little, and every day of my life, every day since then, I'm including Christmas Day, Easter, every day, Sundays, weekends, I'm always thinking one thing, how can I make this better? Whatever I do at whatever level, that is the one crucial thing behind success. It's not being brilliant, it's not being good looking, obviously I don't have that. It's not having...
It's okay, I don't either.
It's not having massive education. No. It's not having the right connections. It's the one thing is looking at what you do every day and saying, how can I improve? And I am pretty obsessional, no matter what it is, whether it's customer service or even more these days, service to franchisees, always want to do better.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's interesting, service to franchisees and trying to make it better for the franchisee. I mean, I run a valuation and advisory business, and I guess I see both the best and the worst of franchising in terms of different systems and how franchisees particularly end up in a positive or negative sense in terms of the value they're building in their business. And for me, the really strong franchises are the ones where there seems to be a great balance between the franchisor and the franchisee, or the franchise system and the franchisee. And I look at certain franchises and their franchisees have been around for years. And they're not there just because they love it. They love it, but they're getting value out of it ongoing. I'm interested to hear how you've built that value system for your franchisees.
Well, it's a lot of it's in the contracts. One of the things I did, I looked at the VIP contract and I thought it was unfair. I thought it was too biased towards the franchisor. I actually spent 9 months arguing with lawyers about getting a contract that I was happy with. Yeah. And it gave my franchisees rights that I looked at the things that people might not like and I changed them. For example, one of the things I knew franchisees didn't like is the idea you've got regular clients. Somebody comes into an area, a new franchisee, and they take your clients and give them to them. Now, franchisees don't like that. No. If they want to sell them, that's different. So I actually put in my contract, I'm not able by contract to take regular clients off my franchisees without their consent, unless the customer complains, of course. Other things, for example, I wanted my franchisees to come in and be able to fulfill their ambitions. So we set up a system of fees that allowed them to put an unlimited number of trailers on in those days, a limited number of workers. There's no limit to what they can do in terms of the... They're also not restricted by territory. Territory guides us. So we can only give a job to a franchisee. If a job comes into a franchisee's territory and they want it, they must get it. But they are not restricted, except they can't door knock somebody else's territory.
Right.
So I set up a system that was very favourable to franchisees, gave them a lot of rights, even against myself, because I figured I want a system that I want to join. Now the lawyers said, this is crazy stuff. The way they put it, you're being too nice. I said, and they said, you want to take some of this control back with time. But I did the opposite. I gave my franchisees extra rights. For example, they can move to a different franchisor if they're not happy. Their own franchisor has no say. They can vote out their franchisor, and that includes me as a regional franchisor. They can also veto changes to their own manual. So with time, we actually gave franchisees more and more rights.
Right.
So that was the start of it.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, when I started, I did everything I possibly could to make my franchisees happy. And I was up against a much bigger competitor, much better finance, more money, more success, more franchisees, more everything. Better office. I was running it from my basement. They had but I had one secret weapon with a list of my franchisees. So I had a list of my franchisees with their phone numbers. And when somebody came to me and said, why would he buy from you when you're running it from your basement? Here's this established company. And I said, listen, there's some differences. I explained what they are. But here is a list of my franchisees with their contact numbers. I want you to go and ring as many of them as you can.
Talk to them about the experience.
And ask them. And when you've done that, go and get VIP's list and ring theirs, which I knew they wouldn't provide because they couldn't. Because I knew that the great majority of my franchisees were happier. And that's what made it work. And it just exploded. I had 60 after my first year. People were coming from interstate. I was amazed at what happened. Yeah. But the one simple idea, how can I make my franchisees delighted?
In hindsight, looking at those early years, do you think you benefited from having that bigger franchisee group there?
Oh, yeah.
Because it showed the point of difference.
Oh, I feel I owe full credit to Bill Viss. I think he was the pioneer.
Yeah.
And you know, in those days, 250 was a lot of franchisees. It was huge.
It was. Yeah.
To us, it's a sort of a moderate-sized division, but it was really, really big, and it wasn't known in Australia at that time. So yeah, no, it's good. He's always a very friendly guy, Bill. We've met on a couple of occasions, and he's always very pleasant.
That's fascinating, Jim. And we just go back to the continuous improvement piece and the little improvements. As an individual, are you a detailed person in that sense? I think you mentioned, if I got you wrong, obsessive on detail or improvements, or are you a strategic person that notices the opportunities for change, or how are you wired in that sense, or are you both?
I don't know how you describe me, actually. I'd say one thing is that I am pathetic at doing almost everything. Okay, I'm no good at finance, I'm no good with IT, I'm no good at management in general. One of the very few things I'm good at is ideas. I keep in very close contact with my franchisees and franchisors and clients. Yes. I have multiple relationships a day with people approaching me. Just as an example today, okay? Somebody approached me. This just happened about 2 hours ago. Okay. One of my franchisees approached me, and this is the guy who's a fencing franchisee, and very unusual fencing. He didn't have enough work. And he was asking why jobs were coming into his suburb, and he wasn't getting them. And I looked at it, and I found that the territory size was unreasonably small.
Right.
Because it was like a mowing-sized territory. So what I immediately said is, okay, let's expand your territory to the size of your suburb, which is about 6,000 households, which I thought was more reasonable for fencing. Yeah. Mowing, maybe anything down to 500, but fencing, you know...
It's not the frequency of jobs, it's a different...
It's a different business. So I just discovered that, arranged for his territory to be increased, which has been done. It's been more or less trebled in size. And then I said to documents, from now on with fencing, set your territory sizes larger because that's fair for this kind of division. Now, I just mentioned that because this happened about 2 hours ago. Yeah. Franchisee approached me with an issue. I looked at it and I said, it's not reasonable. This guy could get all the jobs in that suburb. rather than just in this area of it. So I changed it, and we're going to change it for the future.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing happens all the time.
So are you a problem solver?
Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, is that, I said that very quickly, but is that the essence of the value Jim adds day to day to the group?
Well,
you identify issues and help solve problems?
Yes. I don't actually do the work though. I didn't actually change the territory.
Yeah.
I actually got the documents. I sent them an email. The whole thing took me about 20 minutes to figure it out, to see why these jobs weren't going to him and all the rest of it. And there was other problems too that I was looking at. So it was about a 20-minute job. So I put it at somebody else to fix it in the end, but I worked out what the problem was. So yeah, I don't do a lot, but I'm always looking at what we can do in general sense.
That are blocking things, perhaps.
Yeah, how can we improve?
Yeah.
I got an email from somebody about approving a particular kind of expense. So I'm in contact with my new finance head, and I said to him, we need a process by which we can actually have a system that allows certain kinds of costs to be actually identified and covered and put in the budget.
Yeah.
So we need an improvement in the process. That just happened maybe about 3 hours ago.
Yeah.
So that's my everyday. Look at everything that goes on. Clients get in contact with me. There's a problem. Why isn't the franchisor getting back to them? What's going wrong? What can we change? How can we do things differently to make sure clients get a better response to a particular complaint?
When did Jim's group become? Was there a time at which it became more than? Not putting it the right way, right? But during the growing pains and the growth of the group, is there a time when you thought, God, this has got bigger than me? It's way bigger than me. How am I going to manage this beast? Do you know what I mean? Was there ever that feeling as you went through the growth stage? And you're still going through the growth stage, I guess. But
it happens all the time.
Yeah.
You get to a stage where things aren't working so well. You need somebody else. You need to get better expertise on board. The hardest thing is to find good people to help me to grow. And we've really struggled a lot, made some mistakes in the past. It's been extremely difficult because I'm not a very hands-on person myself. I'm not a terrific manager. I'm not a very good finance person. I'm not good at all these things. So I need to find people that I can trust to carry on with it and then say, you handle it.
Yeah.
And I've got people like Rocky, and I've got people like John, and I've got people like Megan. There's all people in different areas who are good at doing things far better than I can. So finding good people, identifying them, working with them, communicating with them. See, every day I walk around the office. I actually walk about 5,000 paces a day. Mostly just going back and forth around the office and things. I talk to people, say what's going on, what's happening, how did this go, what this happened here, what can we do about this, how can we improve that? Just every day, all the time, that's constant process of communicating, but not telling people how to do their job, but just saying, okay, we need to do more of this.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're as connected today as you were right at the beginning with the people in the business, yeah?
Oh, I'm very connected. I'm connected at every level. I'm connected with my staff, not only senior staff, but also a lot of junior staff. I chat to them about what's going on. I'm connected with my franchisees, I'm connected with my franchisors, I'm connected with my clients. I'm always trying to get information about what's going on and how can I improve it. Look, my wife calls me a workaholic, but I don't think I am actually. I do take time off. I have other things that interest me. But I put it this way, I find it very difficult to take a holiday. For me to take a week off over Christmas is very, very difficult because it's so interesting, it's so absorbing, the whole thing.
Yeah. Do you have other interests that are not Jim's group though? If you're relaxing for a day off or a weekend, what apart from family, what do you spend your time on?
Well, there's obviously my research project that I'm looking into.
Yes.
So I meet up with the guy in charge of that. So next week I'm going to have lunch with him. We're going to talk about the different project, how we can do it, and I meet up with the team. But we're having later in the month, we're having a half-day workshop. So I do that kind of thing. That's still work, I suppose. I have a farm.
Yes.
I go up there at the weekends. I'm planting nuts through the forest. I've got a mattock and dig a big hole and put the nuts in, so we're growing nut trees all over this place. It's about 250 acres and turning it into an organic food forest. That's a big hobby for me. It's great fun.
Yeah. How do you? Is it therapeutic to be out there?
Oh yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love being outside. Yes, I'm still a gardener at heart. You see, that's why.
Yeah, you haven't moved far from the
I
garden.
don't mow lawns for a living, but I still love gardening, and I've got a veggie garden there, and I'm growing all sorts of things. My peas are coming up nicely and stuff. So, silver beets and rhubarb and planted kale, planted a whole lot of stuff which we're going to eat. Potatoes, all kinds of things. So I just love that. I love growing some of my own food. I don't live off it, but I enjoy it as a hobby.
You enjoy it, yeah.
And I listen. I read a lot, and I listen to talking books a lot. I probably read or listen to, on average, 2 or 3 books a week.
Really?
But a lot of it's the same thing. So I'm exercising. I run half an hour every morning, and while I'm doing that, I'm listening or watching or learning something. And if I drive to the farm, I'm talking book, and I'm working on the farm. I've usually got a talking book going at the same time. So it's kind of, yeah, you can do more than one thing at once.
So you mentioned a few physical things there, and also some mental things, right? So you're reading and listening, but the planting of the trees, the gardening, and the exercising, do you think that's important? Is that important for you to be effective?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's very, very satisfying. I find doing hard physical work outside, in the elements, year round, middle of winter, everything is very, very therapeutic.
Do you make better decisions as a result of that, or is that it's not connected to that? It's just...
Oh no, I quite often, that's what I'm thinking. See, I'm listening to a talking book, which is often about business. The moment I'm listening to one about the invasion of Ukraine and what was behind Putin's mind. But before that, I was listening to one about the art of conversation, how you relate to people better.
Yes, yes.
And before that, I was reading one about business. So it's all. But then when I'm doing this and when I'm working and when I'm thinking and listening to these books, I'm actually getting ideas. So actually, I might write down a whole lot of ideas, and they come back with a blizzard of ideas, which I'm like this.
You said you were good at ideas, right? That was one of the...
Yes.
You told me you're not good at a whole bunch of things, but you said ideas were good, right?
Well, it's one of the very few things I'm actually good at. I'm very creative. I can look at things that go on and I can work out how to improve them. I just get ideas all the time about how to do things better.
But they're not necessarily, excuse the language, harebrained ideas. You've synthesised them to an idea that you think you could implement.
No, most of my ideas are complete crap.
Oh, they are? Oh, right.
But
they've got to start somewhere, right?
You've got to try things. You've got to try different
Yeah.
things, and we do things all the time. It's just like the Gymland stunt, okay?
Yes,
That
yes.
just
I've heard about the Gymland stunt.
Well, how does that arise? It's because I'm out in the evening. We're talking about our annual April Fool's Day joke, which we do every year.
Yeah.
And two of us were chatting about it, and we came up with this notion of declaring independence.
Yeah.
So that was.
So why not?
Why not? So we just laughed about it. We thought it was a bit fun, and so we did it. That happened a couple of weeks later. It was just.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know it might seem a bit deep, but where did this? I get a sense of an internal fire around the ideas, right? But where did that come from, Jim? Like, was it in your family upbringing? Was it, part of what happened at school? Is it just your makeup? Where did it come from, do you think? And what keeps it stoked?
I'm described by different people as a force of nature. I have this extreme drive to succeed and to do things, and it just ignores anything that goes wrong. It just keeps on going. I don't get discouraged. I don't stop. I'm quite puritanical in a lot of ways, you might say. For example, I don't drink. I don't smoke. I maintain a proper weight. I exercise very rigorously. Yeah. I'm a very strong Christian, which is a lot part of my ideological basis. It's a very strong sense of morality, a sense of what's right and what's wrong.
Yes.
Doesn't mean I say I do a lot of bad things. I do. I'm known as being very impatient and bad-tempered at times, for example.
Yes.
So I have many weaknesses, but I do have this extreme, intense drive. And I keep myself very physically and mentally fit in a whole lot of ways. So that all helps, I think.
Yeah.
Exposure to cold helps too.
Sorry?
Exposure to cold.
Exposure
I take
to
cold showers.
Cold showers?
Yeah, that kind of thing too.
Yeah.
I think you've got to discipline your body. You've got to always be looking at the things, what's the right thing to do now rather than the easy thing. It's easy to sit down and just veg out on the couch and eat pizza, but getting up and going for a run and having a cold shower and eating vegetables is not quite so easy in the short term, but much, much better in the long term. So you always got to think long term.
So both in terms of benefits for business and also just for life, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there's no great distinction. I think business is about life.
I'm interested in that because, there's all this work-life balance business. But is it just one continuum? Like, is it all mixed? Is it all integrated?
From my point of view, it's very difficult to know where one begins and one ends. For example, let me say I'm working on my farm and I'm listening to a talking book. I'm getting ideas about how to improve my business. Is that recreation or is that work?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's no clear distinction. Or I might be just chatting with somebody in the office, and often we talk about things. Sometimes, quite often, talk about things that aren't business at all.
Yep.
And then we just chat about other things, and business comes into it. So it's very difficult to actually draw the line in my life. Look, I drive my son to school every day and pick him up, almost every day. And he's 13 years old. We have a great chat on the way. That's a great privilege to be able to do that.
It is.
Now I might work weekends. The weekend I'm going to be at the Franchise Expo, so I'll be away for several hours.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of.
That's just how it is.
Yeah. But I enjoy it. It's a very fun life. I don't think there's a happier person on the face of the earth than me right now, honestly.
I'm delighted to hear that, but also it's great to have ideas, but it's even better to be able to implement some of those, right?
Oh, yeah.
And there's no doubt you've spent some time doing that. It's very clear. I mean, you've moved from mowing to add on a whole bunch of other services, and obviously, large numbers, both in Australia, but New Zealand, Canada, am I right?
Yeah, mostly Australia, New Zealand. There's about 60 in Canada. So.
Yeah. So strategically, what made you branch beyond our shores? When did you know you were ready for that? Or did it just creep up on you?
No, to be honest, most changes that you think were driven by me were actually driven by somebody else. For example, cleaning.
Yeah.
Why do we go beyond mowing? How did I go into anything else but mowing? Now, this is a gardening image. This is a guy with a beard and a hat, which is me. That's what I look like. And they just did a graphical image of me, okay? So that's how that was. Now, then we came up with the idea of cleaning, okay, because it's a similar franchise setup. It's a similar service. It's regular and it's about the same hourly rate, this kind of thing. So we thought, okay, let's do cleaning. Now, but for a cleaning franchise, you don't want a guy with a beard and a hat who looks like a gardener. You want, because it might be a woman. So let's try. So I set up this thing called Sunlight, SUNLIT, and did a logo with sprays and stuff, and sold a couple of franchises, and we couldn't find them work.
Right.
So eventually I gave them the money back and said, sorry, it's not working. And then somebody came to me and said, what about doing Jim's cleaning? And I said, well, no, because it's a mowing. Obviously, it's a mowing image. It won't work. And they said, yes, it will work. We think it will. I said, no, it won't. And they said, well, we'll give it a try ourselves. So I said, all right, if you want to do a kind of a joint venture, sure, use our brand and systems. And
see what happens.
And see what happens. And it worked.
Yeah.
So it was surprising to me. And the same thing happened with overseas. How did we go into New Zealand? Because some of our franchisee in South Australia, with support from the franchisor there, actually said we'd like to go to New Zealand and start up gyms in New Zealand. So it was kind of their initiative, and I said, okay, you can have the regional franchise rights for the country over there, and we'll have an arrangement for royalties and so forth. Sadly, actually, they failed.
Did they?
They put on 4 franchisees, and they ran out of money, and because they weren't mowing lawns, which was a mistake, they couldn't support themselves, so they gave up and went back home. And then, but eventually we got back into it, and we looked after the franchisees, so we couldn't abandon the people who were there. And now there's 300 franchisees over there.
Wow.
And by the way, the regional rights that these people walked away from would now be worth multiple millions.
Yeah, fascinating. And in that short talk, you've mentioned a number of sort of trials, I guess. Is that the nature of how the business has developed? You've tried some things out and refined or changed as a result of what's happened, and then moved to the next stage.
There's one ironclad law that I've discovered. Nothing ever works out the way you expect. Most things work out a lot worse than you expect. Some things work out far better than you expect. Nothing goes what you expect. I've had so many ridiculously bad ideas and things that have lost me money. Like I tried to get a holiday resort going. I had no idea what I was doing. It was a complete fiasco. I tried trade exchange a couple of times, really bad idea. I tried opening a factory, that was a dreadful loss. I could keep on going. And there's divisions that we've got that don't run anymore, that have failed. So,
But you're not afraid of failure by the sound of it.
no, because you've got to try things. What you've got to do is to set things up in a way, try and minimise the cost, and then just
Have a go.
have a go and see what it does. And yeah, no, I'm not afraid of failing. I think it's just, I mean, business is fun. It really is. You just got to try new stuff all the time.
Now, you were a PhD student at history, right?
Yes.
What have you picked up in that process of learning that you use today?
My theory actually taught me more about living a good personal life. These things, ideas about self-discipline, about being, reasonably chaste in your marital behaviour, those kind of things, and alcohol and those kinds of areas too. So it taught me that basic character is the basis of civilization, individual character, and there are certain kinds of practices that build character.
Yes.
Things like limiting food, exercise, those kind of self-discipline type of things. So in a sense, it helped in that way. I couldn't say there's a lot of direct connection. The big connection between the two is that my ideas that I developed in my PhD are really, really, really radical. They actually, if you open up any history book and you open it in terms of biology, look, it's wrong. This is not what happened. Why did the Second World War take place? There's a totally different reason. So the First World War is what I call the same thing as a Lemming cycle population migration. It's totally different ideas about history. Why did we develop to do with the effects of religion and stuff? And it's totally, totally radical. In fact, I basically failed my PhD the first time I put it through.
Yeah, I heard that.
Because it was so wildly... Normally a PhD examiner will give us several pages. 2 of the 3 gave a single paragraph, basically fairly non-committal, not knocking it back. And the third one said something like, if this was a magnum opus at the end of a distinguished career, then maybe we'd pay this. But who is this guy? But I eventually rewrote some of the methodology section, and they did get it through. And I'm legally Dr. Penman. I want to call myself that, which I don't in normal terms.
Dr. Jim.
But the point of it is, the commonality both my business and my research are based on the fact that I'm extremely unconventional. I don't care what anybody else thinks. Like I always say, if you had a room full of professors or business gurus telling me that I'm wrong, I don't care.
No.
Because they don't have a good reason for it. But if a 12-year-old kid was to say to me, this is the reason why you're wrong, here's the evidence that you're wrong, then I'd listen to them. It's not the person, it's the ideas that matter.
So in that mind of yours, the unconventional aspect, is that because you're constantly questioning things? It sounds like you're not one to just take an assumption and accept things on face value.
I'll decide everything on my own basis. I'm very, very... Compared with most people, I'm extremely resistant to peer pressure.
Yeah.
I just don't care what other people think unless they can show me why they've got a better idea. I don't care how many people tell me I'm wrong. If I think I'm right, I'm right.
Yeah. And is that part of the success of Jim's group?
Obviously, it's the same pattern.
Yeah.
The difference is that in academic terms, if you're too unorthodox, that you're out of a career. In business terms, nobody minds that as long as what you give is great service to your clients, great service to your franchisee. Even if the idea behind them are really wacky and strange, if they work in the commercial sense,
then it'll be accepted and used. Yeah.
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 Look, it's a very simple operation, franchising. What you've got to do is to make your franchisees happy and successful. There's nothing else beyond that. Everything, even customer service to franchisees, depends on the same thing. So the thing I quote is a very simple statistic of what franchising is about. If you go into an independent cleaning or gardening business, your chance of being in business within 12 months is between 5 and 10%. Yeah. You can look this up on Google. This is well-recognised figures. So you're 90 to 95% of people who go into independent business will fail in their first 12 months. Okay, what's the figure with us? 12% will fail. Yeah. Or 12% will be gone within 12 months. And we've got figures going back years. Now, not all of them failed. Some of them had offered other jobs and so forth.
They kind of worked out it wasn't quite for them.
Yeah, it wasn't quite for them. But sometimes they do fail too. That does happen. Yeah. But that figure, that 12%, is what you focus on. Or we do a survey every year. We ask every franchisee, how do you rate your income? Now, we don't ask what they're making. We said your income good, satisfactory, poor. Okay, average 8% poor, but usually a bit over half good, rest satisfactory, about 8% poor. That figure there is the really important one. How can you reduce that figure? How can that go down? Some divisions as low as like 4%. Yeah. Others, one division is actually significantly higher. So you've got to look at that and say, why is that happening? Why so many people? Yeah. We had one division which was actually 50%, which was our IT division, 50% poor, which is terrible. Now we did some things, I talked to the people running it, it's now got down to 30%. Still not good enough. But you look at that all the time, you see, how can you measure franchisee success? And the thing we found too is that the biggest single factor that determines franchisee being successful is the level of customer service they give. So franchisees, for example, who are very, very good customer service, very, very few report poor income, but of those who give poorer customer service, much larger proportion will.
Poor income. So on the one side I'm hearing sometimes you just got to try it and have a go, but on the other side I'm hearing the key to success is sort of data-driven decision making in a way.
Yeah.
Look at the evidence.
But you try all sorts of different things. Like, for example, in the early days of gyms, we were looking at different ways to try and use the fee system to drive customer service. And we tried a number of different things, methods to do it. And then we hit upon the idea of let's have lead fees. Now, basically, service franchises try to work on fixed rate fees for the most part. You have a certain amount, because you don't know what a person's making. So it's very difficult to do it percentage-wise like you do at McDonald's. So there's a set fee. And then we were using something like that with some adjustments. And then we actually had a try. We said, okay, why don't we have a set fee, but make it lower than the standard fee, but on top of it, you pay a small fee for every lead provided. Yeah. Because that gives the franchisee a strong incentive only to take the work they want. And when they take the work, then they follow it up. Yeah. Now, so we did this as a trial. No idea. It's one of a number of trials. Then we actually had some franchisees on this newfangled lead fee system and some on the traditional fixed fee system, and we rang the clients. And there was a dramatic difference in the client response. Where there was a fixed fee, 25% of clients had no response. Where there was a lead fee, 3%. When we looked at the actual number of jobs done, where there was a lead fee, 75% of the leads turned into work. Where there was a fixed fee, just under half turned into work. Now, what we've done by making one small change to the fee system, we increased the number of actual jobs being done out of the total number of leads by 50%.
That's huge.
But that was only one of many experiments. But as soon as we saw that, as soon as we saw the figures,
that opened up an opportunity to...
That's right. Or another example, okay, in the early days of gyms, we thought, okay, what's the best form of support? Now, obviously, if franchisees ring us, that's important, we've got to respond. That's always been the case from the beginning. But we thought of the idea we'd have a business review. So every year, franchisor sits down with the franchisees, goes through their whole business, spends a half day, 4 hours going through their business. How can I improve our business? Okay, we tried this. We measured the effect. Would you like to guess what the effect was?
Zero.
No effect at all. Now, but in the course of doing all this stuff, we were looking at different franchisors, because we have regional franchisors. Who's successful? Who's got the happiest franchisees? Who's growing their numbers best? And we started looking at what they were doing. And what we discovered was there were some franchisors who weren't doing these reviews like 6 monthly, annual reviews, but they were ringing their franchisees regularly, picking up the phone and saying, how are you going, mate?
Yeah.
And they were far more successful. So the weird thing was that half a day had no effect, but 5 minutes a month had a big effect. And later on, we found that some franchisors were ringing them weekly or even more, and that had even bigger effect. Even if it was a very short conversation, even not about work. Now, that wasn't obvious at all, because what we came to understand was that what was happening, it wasn't just about helping them to run a business, it was about relationship. So you develop a bond, you establish a tie with the franchisee, you get to know them, you become a friend, you become a mentor. If they've got problems, then you talk to you. And that was what worked. This wasn't obvious, this wasn't logic, this was just experience. Along
with that relationship, is there a subtle accountability transfer in that regular discussion, do you think? Is that sort of enhancing the pressure on the franchisee to deliver as a result, do you think?
Well, to a certain extent, because one of the things franchisors will talk to franchisees about is complaints. But most franchisees in gyms don't get many complaints. No. They actually, the level of service, especially lately, is astonishingly high. Not astonishing, it's not high enough, but it's our level of complaints would be like less than 1% of what it was before franchise days. And it's just come down over the years as we've got better and better systems, better and better IT, better and better coaching, retraining, all kinds of things, always looking at these stats and trying to improve them.
So, but are those franchisees, as a result of that regular contact and relationship, are they feeling like their franchisors got their back? Or, what is that part of the...
Typically, I make a practice of ringing certain franchises, like on major anniversaries, like 10, 15, 20 years. It's very normal and common to say the franchisor is great. They've got a great relationship with them. They also see them regularly at meetings. We've worked out how often to have meetings, which is once about every 6 weeks, which is the optimum time. More than that doesn't help. Less than that, definitely worse. So that's how you work that out. Then you look at the structure, the format of the meeting, how you run a meeting, what you put into it. We recommend putting a meal into all my franchisees that I look after. We always have a meal. Not expensive one, but just eat together, build social bonds, as well as a lot of it's to do with relationship, it's community, it's extended family, that kind of idea. I didn't understand that when I started.
Didn't you?
But looking at it and seeing, we didn't understand how important meetings were. You know, in the beginning we started off running interstate. Most of our interstate franchisees failed. Most of them failed, even though we were given the same leads. But they didn't meet together. And then as soon as we started running local franchisors, local meetings, then we started to get success all over the place. But we didn't know that.
And you can't really put those things in a franchise agreement, can you? Like it's part of the culture. It's, in the way in some respects, what I'm hearing is part of the cultural experience of being part of the Jim's group as a franchisee.
Yes. Yeah. Jim's has a very strong culture. People often ask me if I'm proud of having nearly 5,000 franchises. Will be 5,000 probably in the next couple of weeks. Yeah. And I say, well, not really, because numbers is a sign you're doing the right thing. But the thing I'm most proud of is the fact that my passion for franchisees and passion for clients, and clients is all about making franchises successful, is something that's been very widely disseminated. We had a guy from the UK who'd been involved in dozens of franchising systems over the years.
Yes.
And he came to one of our national conferences, which was held in Queensland that year. And this guy said he'd never seen anything like Jim's. The culture, the passion for franchisees was quite different to any other franchise company. It's a very emotional thing. Look, people come here, they listen to my talk first thing on Monday morning. I talk about the Jim's ethos, which is really hard on customer service, but also why they are so important. And I get everybody my name, not only my phone number, my personal phone number, which outsiders do not get. Nobody gets it outside. And I get them my email address. And you ring me. You contact me whenever you've got any problems. And I reinforce it again and again. And I write to them directly. And I do everything possible. Now, and then they go through, listen to talks of other people who really share this kind of passion. We call it being Jimified. Yeah. People who go through this process tend to become it's very much like a tribe, like a family.
Yeah.
Very demanding at times. People get very upset. I had a franchisee this morning who was really angry and irate at me because it was about complaints. And he said, this proves you don't care about franchisees because the fact that you pushed me about complaints. And I said, well, no, it's because I care about you and your success. It's why we push customer service so much.
Yeah. So there's a lot of discipline in what I'm hearing there.
Yeah.
Around, you're guarding that culture and your group's guarding that culture very, very closely.
But a lot of talking too.
Yeah.
I'm very passionate. I'm always on, and I'm very consistent in the basis. We change the nature of what we do all the time. We're always innovating, but the core values, like if in the front of my book, for example, you'll see this little triplet, and on the bottom of my emails, our first priority is the welfare of our franchisee. We are passionate about customers. We sign the new franchisees and franchisors we are convinced will succeed. Now that little 3-part thing has been there for decades, and it's never changed. Yeah. But everything else changes. And that reminds me of, you've read the books like Good to Great, Built to Last?
Yes.
Okay. One of the things they looked at in terms of what was the core behind long-term successful businesses, and bear in mind, Jim's doing a tiny fraction of those businesses, but there was a common ideology, a core values, which was different to every company, but it was shared from the mailroom to the CEO. This shared sense of purpose, of belief. Everything else changed, but not that core. That's what Jim's is like. We're very, very, very adaptable. We change all the time about the way we do things. Every day, multiple times a day, we change things, we change. We're never satisfied. But the core, service to franchisees, service to customers, never changes.
Never satisfied, but do you celebrate success sufficiently?
Well, who knows what's sufficient? I think I'm relentlessly self-critical. You can't not be in my situation.
I hear that. But I'm not raising that in a negative way, to be frank. I mean, that's part of your continuous improvement, isn't it?
I think the important thing is to recognise success in other people. Like, for example, just yesterday, I had a fairly new staff member who's only been here 2 months, and I gave her a $10,000 pay rise as a thank you. And I said, "You have done a fantastic job. I cannot believe what you've achieved. That's great. Here's some more money." Okay, which means a lot to people, actually. And sometimes even a small thing, like in the call centre, every month I have a little ceremony go in, and they go in there and we give out certificate, and I shake them by the hand and I say, "Look, you've done this. You've been really consistent. You're just so cheerful. You're great with clients. Here's a certificate. There's a little bit extra in your pay packet. Not a lot. It's $150, but it
recognises,
it
acknowledges.
You've got to let people know that they're appreciated, they do well. And I think that giving people as much independence as possible in how they do their job,
yes,
but rewarding and recognising things that they do well.
Particularly an initiative to try and improve. I guess.
We're setting up an award system right now. We're just discussing it this morning. I just mentioned this thing today. We've got these Accor vouchers that we're getting done, and we're buying a whole stack of them. We're getting them at a very good discount. And this gives you, free accommodation, 2 nights accommodation plus half price meals and this kind of stuff. So it's a really nice thing. We've got it at a good discount. And we're working out how to give it. So what we're going to do, actually, we're going to promote it. This is just starting now.
Right.
We're going to work out different ways. So you can just write in and say anything that you've done, like number of 5-star surveys in a month, best turnover in the last, good turnover in the past year. There's hundreds of potentials. Best comment from a client, something that you've done for the community that's helpful. So anything that's recognisable, we're going to put it out there. You put it in if it looks good, which they mostly will. We'll give them this really nice award and a recognition, and we'll interview them and say, "Okay, congratulations." That's just an idea we're talking about today.
And it's also that's prompting them to think about their own performance and successes, isn't it?
Yeah,
really?
It's a recognition thing, because also you show a person. Let's just say that here's somebody who in their first year turned over $300,000.
Yeah.
Now, people are going to look at that, and we make clear that everybody, especially in the region, knows about that.
Yeah.
And they're thinking, this person's making $300,000 a year. I'm only doing $120,000 a year. Hey, what can I learn from this person?
Yes.
Or just be inspired by somebody else's story. That's just a powerful thing. And also it's good for social media too, because we interview them, we say, this is what somebody's done. This is a great story. So we get them to bring in the stories so we can actually spread them out and let everybody else know about it.
Yeah, no, I like that. And just thinking about that, if I was interested to become a franchisee of Jim's Group, what sort of person would I need to be? I mean, not everyone is a successful franchisee. How do I need to be motivated as a budding business person? And what are the characteristics that are right to be a franchisee of the group, as distinct from someone that perhaps doesn't pass muster?
Okay. First of all, we have a very strong emphasis on screening people out that shouldn't be successful. They shouldn't be franchisees. Yeah. There are certain red flags. For example, if you've got somebody who's early 20s and their parent is providing with the money, we'd say no.
Why is that?
Because they're going to fail. Because that's just a pretty well guaranteed, because they haven't put the money up themselves. Now, if they've actually struggled and got a job and managed to do that, or if they're a bit older and they've actually got a house and a mortgage and a family, they're a lot more secure. So, but there's a lot of things too. You look at things like the questions they ask. You put them out on the road, see how they go, see if they last a day, see if they show initiative. Yeah. But we only knock back probably about 1 in 10 of applicants. Most people who are interested in a franchise are...
They're self-screened.
They're mostly self-screened, yeah, because they're not going to think about investing in a business if they're full, fundamentally. So they tend to self-select. We try to knock out the ones. I categorise franchisees into 3 basic types. Yeah. You've got gold franchisees. They're the kind that probably would succeed even by themselves. They're the 5 or 10% that would succeed even as independents. And anybody who starts a business independent and succeeds, I take my hat off. I have a lot of respect for them. It's so hard. If they come to us, though, that kind of person, they tend to be explosive, and they'll put on workers and they'll put multiple trailers on and they'll turn over $300,000 a year, this kind of thing.
What's the standout with those people in terms of attributes?
Very much what I was saying before. They're the kind of person that looks at what they do all the time and says, how can I do it better? All the time. Okay. Constant. Learn, come to meetings, pick it up, talk to anybody, read anything, listen to anything.
So voracious appetite.
Voracious learning. That's the thing. Yeah. Then you have the majority of franchisees that I would describe as bronze.
Yes.
They're people who probably wouldn't succeed in business by themselves, but given leads, given a system we have pay for work guarantee where they can do freebies and get paid for them, given ongoing support, given mentoring, given regular meetings, given all the structure that we have, they can succeed. That's the majority. They're not going to become rich, but they can have a better lifestyle than they had in the past. Yeah. And then we have what people we call lead, and that's maybe the bottom 5%. Yeah. And a lead is somebody who won't listen, can't listen. They're the opposite to a gold. So a gold is the person that always looks at themselves, how can I do it better? A lead is somebody that says, anything that goes wrong is not my fault. It's the client's fault, it's the system's fault, complaint system is unfair, everybody's unreasonable, nobody cares about me, it's all somebody else's fault. I don't need to change, and they're the ones that tend to fail.
Wow, those three groups are a really interesting kind of explanation of who's got the ability to succeed and who hasn't, and the attributes.
But our job too is to try and get the bronzes to move into gold.
Yes.
And with the right training and support, you can have somebody who actually moves quite substantially ahead with time.
Which must be very satisfying.
Very satisfying.
Because you're giving those people the opportunity to run a business that otherwise may not have had the opportunity to run a business. Being
a franchisor is a great job. It really is, because you're a business mentor. You're somebody who can coach and you can change lives. And I've got so many wonderful, wonderful men and women who do this kind of job. They're just incredible human beings who care passionately about their franchisees.
Yeah, I want to talk about mentors, given you raised it. Do you have some mentors that mentor you?
No, not really.
No?
Most of it I read from books, actually.
Yeah, okay. So that tends to be where you get your inspiration, or you test your thoughts by reading literature of a range of different avenues?
Yeah, but I have a lot of people who help me with advice and help. A lot of them, I've got some wonderful staff.
Yes. And
they will give me feedback about various things, including things that I may have made a mistake on. I've got people in my church, for example, who would mentor me in various ways. I had one of my very close friends the other day said, the way you acted in that particular situation wasn't appropriate. You shouldn't have done that. That could affect people that way. And so I said, thank you.
But that's really valuable, right, isn't it? Don't you think, for someone that knows you, perhaps in a different environment, is prepared to say, hey, Jim, do you know this is what I think? Without fear or favour, so to speak.
That's right. Yeah. I think, James, one of the most underrated virtue in business is humility. It's the willingness to look at what you do and say, I'm not perfect, I make mistakes. How can I get help? You have to have a sense of confidence in yourself. If you're totally battered around by everybody's opinion, that's not going to work. Yeah. But if somebody comes to you and says, hey, this is a mistake, or this is something you've done wrong, I value that enormously.
Yes.
I mean, a good manager is somebody who's prepared to actually tell me. And that's not always easy, because I'm a very forceful character, as you probably worked out. But
I understand that. Unfortunately, I have that attribute too, but humility, right? Like, it's having confidence and being forceful and backing yourself, but at the same time, having your ego in check sufficiently that you're prepared to, admit you made a mistake and listen to someone that's prepared to take you to task.
That's right. Well, if you look at this book, for example, this is my story. It's actually full of failures, of all the things I've done wrong, of all the mistakes that I've made. It's a very flawed account. You wouldn't look at this and say, this guy's an all-encompassing genius. In fact, you'd look at it and say he's a total idiot in so many ways. He's done so many dumb things. And I look back upon the past and I think, wow, my goodness, all that was such a bad decision. But
was it therapeutic to write it?
Well, I don't know. But I talk about it all the time anyway. I always talk about my failures. That's part of the thing. Look, I would hate for somebody to listen to me or read something that I've written and say, that guy is so brilliant, I could never be as good as Jim. I would like somebody to look at me and say, well, if that idiot can do it, I can surely do it much better. I mean, surely that's the kind of...
He's got his strengths, he's got his flaws.
Yes.
You know, he's learned from his flaws.
And everybody does. Everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. There's nobody I know that doesn't have incomparably greater strengths than I do in certain areas.
Yes.
And the wonderful thing about business is you can be complementary. You don't have to be good at everything. In fact, I think one of my key attributes is that I'm really good at almost nothing. So I always got to find somebody to do it for me. And then I do the peculiar thing I do, which is the listening, the engagement, the ideas, the constant curiosity, the contacts with clients, with franchisees, the constant flow of ideas. And other people who are much more capable than me make it happen.
But you've got to know that, haven't you? Like
Yes.
That's the strength of a business owner that knows their strengths and weaknesses, I think can operate a lot more effectively than one that...
Who thinks they know everything.
Thinks they know, but doesn't really.
I did a study of American college graduates, and they looked at the ones who were most successful. And the ones who actually ended up with the most weren't typically top of the class. They were more run-of-the-mill. The people who were really, really good tend to become top lawyers or financial experts and stuff. But it was the people that weren't quite so capable who actually knew how to engage other people to do things they were weakness at. He tended to be the best.
We should bring our talk to a close, but your family, your mum and dad, your family, what are the values that came from there to what I see today in the CEO of Jim's Group?
Family values. Difficult to say, actually. I mean, my parents are good people, very not easy people. My mother was very anxious. My father got angry a lot. So, but I got a very well with my parents, especially in old age and so forth. But quite driven people. My father was very intellectual, very interested in history. He was an engineer actually, but he was very alive kind of mind, very passionate sort of man. Not always easy.
Yeah.
I don't know. See, a lot of I'm very different from my family. I'm a strong Christian. My family's basically all atheists. Well, not my mother actually, but she kind of came along, before she died. So my interest in business is very unusual in my family. Most of my family is professional. My sister was a lawyer and then a scientist. My brother, a computer analyst. Yeah. So the entrepreneurial passion. My sisters and my brother are not particularly parental in their... My brother never had any children. Yeah. My sisters weren't particularly maternal. I love children. I've got 10 children. I'd like more.
Have you? Yeah.
So in some ways I'm like my family. We're very strong-willed people.
Yes.
But in some ways I'm extremely opposite to them.
I mean, the entrepreneurial aspect that's come out in your career is sort of wanting to have a go for yourself, I think. It seems to, it sort of fits neatly with that passion, I guess.
There's a kind of ferocious need to follow your own path. I mean, frankly, I'd rather be running my own mowing business than be a 2IC of a major corporation. It just temperamentally would suit me better because I like to be in charge.
I feel that, Jim, in talking to you.
I wouldn't make a good franchisee because I want to do things different.
Yes.
I'm one of the people who should not be a franchisee because I'm just too...
You buck the system.
I would always want to change things.
So it's lucky you're designing the system, otherwise you'd buck it. Yeah. Jim Penman, thank you very much for joining Let's Talk Business podcast. I really appreciate your time and it's been a fascinating discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, weren't we lucky to listen to Jim Penman and understand a fascinating man all about ever learning and continuous improvement and a passion for making things better. And it's a testament to what Jim and his team have built at Jim's Group, and excited to see the further pursuits. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, subscribe to this podcast and follow us on Instagram at JamesC_Price. And if you're up for improving your business, gaining access to knowledge, insights, our team, and consultations, join our online membership portal. Visit jpabusiness.com.au.